Earning your degree online doesn't mean you have to go about it alone. At Capella University, we're here to support you when you're ready. From enrollment counselors who get to know you and your goals, to academic coaches who can help you form a plan to stay on track. We care about your success and are dedicated to helping you pursue your goals. Going back to school is a big step, but having support at every step of your academic journey can make a big difference. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This episode is brought to you by Vuori. Give the active people in your life something they'll truly appreciate. Performance apparel from Vuori. Whether they're into running, surfing, hiking, or even just casual walks around the block, there's something for everyone. And if you're not sure what to gift them, you can't go wrong with something from Vuori's Dream Knit collection. It's the perfect gift and so comfortable. Get 20% off your first purchase today at Vuori, VUORI.com/Spotify.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, Threads, and Facebook at Red Treehouse Pod. And now you can find the Red Treehouse on Patreon. Join the Red Treehouse community for as little as $3 per month and receive exclusive member benefits, including personal shoutouts, early access to episodes, bonus episodes, and more. Simply go to patreon.com/Red Treehouse. As always, if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature on an upcoming episode, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Important note, sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. Let's start with a question. What are you afraid of? I don't necessarily mean phobias, although that's likely what came to mind. A phobia is a type of situational fear. If you have acrophobia, or a fear of heights, you likely won't plan a ride on a roller coaster anytime soon. In some ways, we can avoid those situations which make us phobic. What I have in mind is a bit more unsettling. The fear that haunts your waking hours, that keeps you up at night, that sits in the background of your psyche. I suspect for each of us, that fear and the anxiety it produces will be different. Except, there are times when it comes to the foreground full force. And there are times when, like a tsunami, it catches everyone in its path of destruction. The Satanic Panic fits that description. A collective, societal panic where the entire country was seemingly terrified the world was being overrun by a secretive network of Satanists, and that everyone was at risk, especially children. But the Satanic Panic didn't just start overnight. And in fact, it's possible the paranoia not only started years before, but was also rooted in a few real-life nightmares. From satanic serial killers, to religious cults, to religious fundamentalism. In this episode of The Red Treehouse, we're going to consider these religious aspects and explore their impact on the Satanic Panic. What role did religion play? And is it possible that a few infamous cases set the world ablaze? I'll share the details. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Naturally, when we talk about the Satanic Panic, it's easy to focus on the paranoia it evoked, but it's nearly impossible to grasp without an understanding of the religious fervor it was rooted in. And for that, we must go back to at least the 1960s. Over the course of 2 terrifying nights in August 1969, 7 people were murdered in Los Angeles, California. Sharon Tate, an actress and the wife of film director Roman Polanski, who was 8.5 months pregnant. Jay Sebring, a celebrity hairdresser. Abigail Folger, heiress to the Folgers coffee empire. Wojciech Frykowski, Abigail Folger's boyfriend. Stephen Parent, a visitor to the home on Cielo Drive. Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, a grocery store owner and a successful businesswoman. The home at 10050 Cielo Drive was beautiful and luxurious, and nestled in the Beverly Crest neighborhood of Los Angeles. Built in 1941, the home was made for privacy and rested on 3 acres of land, which included a private driveway and was surrounded by thick pine and cherry trees. In many ways, it was the least likely place you'd expect a gruesome mass murder to occur. The murderers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, were cunning. Watson climbed a telephone pole outside the house and cut the phone line. Then, they parked their car at the bottom of the hill leading to the property and quietly walked up to the house. One article stated, quote, "They thought that the gate might be electrified or equipped with an alarm, so they climbed a brushy embankment to the right of the gate and entered the grounds." End quote. As a set of headlights flashed towards them, Tex Watson ordered the 3 women to stay hidden in the bushes, stepped out, and instructed the driver to stop. What happened next is the stuff of nightmares. Tex Watson aimed his .22 caliber revolver at the driver, Stephen Parent, who pleaded with Watson to let him go unharmed. Instead of firing, Watson jumped at Parent with a knife, cutting him across the hand. Then, he fired 4 rounds into Stephen Parent's chest and abdomen, killing him instantly. After this, Watson pushed Parent's car away from the main gate to avoid arousing suspicion. Within minutes, the 4 made entry into the home, where they proceeded to commit one of the grisliest mass murders in U.S. history. An important detail: as a stunned Wojciech Frykowski asked Tex Watson who he was and what he was doing there, Watson replied, quote, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." End quote. By the end of the night, 5 adults and 1 unborn child lay dead. The next night, August 10th, 1969, Watson, Krenwinkel, Atkins, and Kasabian were accompanied by Leslie Van Houten, Clem Grogan, and Charles Manson to 3301 Waverly Drive in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles. Upon arriving at the home, Manson slipped inside, where he tied up the occupants and returned to the vehicle. Then, Watson, Krenwinkel, and Van Houten went into the home, where Lino and Rosemary LaBianca were brought into the living room at gunpoint. Watson covered their heads with a pillowcase and secured it with a lamp cord. Then, Manson left the home, after which all hell broke loose. Watson stabbed Lino LaBianca with a bayonet. Then, he went into a bathroom where he found Rosemary LaBianca using a lamp to keep the women at bay. He stabbed her with the bayonet as well, before returning to Lino and stabbing him more than a dozen times. While he was in the living room, the three women were stabbing Rosemary in the bedroom. An important detail: Tex Watson carved the word war into Lino LaBianca's abdomen. Patricia Krenwinkel then wrote Rise and Death to Pigs on the walls, and Helter Skelter on the refrigerator door, all in Lino LaBianca's blood. By the end of the night, 2 adults lay dead. Within a few months, Charles Manson and the members of the Manson family were arrested and charged with murder. It was discovered that Manson was essentially a communal religious cult leader. He established himself as a spiritual guru, gathered followers, and promoted a religious philosophy that, quote, believed Satan would become reconciled to Jesus, and they would come together at the end of the world to judge humanity. Manson allegedly taught his followers that they were the reincarnation of the original Christians, and that the establishment could be characterized as the Romans, end quote. We'll cover Charles Manson and the Manson family killings in an upcoming episode of the Red Treehouse. But Charles Manson and the Manson family weren't the only murderers to set the nation on edge. Between 1976 and 1977, New York City was held hostage by a seemingly elusive serial killer with a preferred weapon, a .44 caliber Bulldog revolver. During his year-long reign of terror, the .44 caliber killer stalked the Bronx and Queens, where he murdered 6 people and wounded 7 more. On the surface, David Berkowitz seemed like your run-of-the-mill killer. But just beneath the surface lied a complicated, scary reality. David Berkowitz had pledged allegiance to Satan. A Psychology Today article dated October 30th, 2023, offered helpful details, stating, quote, David's rage was given direction as well as an illicit purpose through his growing interest in Satanism, which began shortly after his release from the army at the age of 21. Before long, he became obsessed with Satan and the occult. By 1975, isolation, fantasies, and paranoid delusions had progressed to the point that David lost touch with reality. End quote. By Christmas 1975, Berkowitz was motivated to kill, and before the Son of Sam killings a few months later, he attacked 2 teenage girls with a hunting knife. Thankfully, both survived, but neither could identify their attacker, and Berkowitz escaped. A few months after this initial attack, in July 1977, Berkowitz, quote, approached the parked car from behind in a Bronx neighborhood. Inside, Jody Valenti and Donna Loria were talking. Berkowitz fired several shots into the car, killing Loria and wounding Valenti. End quote. Donna Loria was 18 years old, and Jody Valenti was 19 years old. His killing spree went on for another year. On October 23, 1976, 18-year-old Rosemary Keenan and 20-year-old Carl Denaro were sitting in a parked car when an attacker fired into their vehicle. Rosemary Keenan was unwounded, but 20-year-old Carl was shot in the back of the head. He survived, but required, quote, a metal plate to replace the portion of his skull that was missing, end quote. On November 27, 1976, 16-year-old Donna DeMasi and 18-year-old Joanne Lamino were sitting on the front step of Joanne's home when suddenly shots rang out. Donna DeMasi was shot through the base of the neck, while Joanne Lamino was shot in the lower spine while sitting down. Both survived, but Donna spent the rest of her life in a wheelchair. On January 30th, 1977, 30-year-old John Deal and 26-year-old Christine Freund were shot while getting into their Pontiac Firebird. John Deal was unwounded, but Christine died shortly after the attack while in the hospital. On March 8, 1977, 19-year-old Virginia Voskereshane was walking down the street towards her home when she was shot in the head and subsequently killed by a man passing by her. On April 16, 1977, 18-year-old Valentina Suriani and 20-year-old Alexander Esau were both shot in the head while sitting in their Mercury Montego. Valentina died instantly, and Alexander died a few hours later in the hospital. On June 25, 1977, 20-year-old Salvatore Lupo and 17-year-old Judy Placido were both shot while sitting in their car. Salvatore was shot in the wrist, with the bullet ricocheting into Judy's neck. Judy was also shot in the head and shoulder. Both survived. On July 31, 1977, 20-year-old Bobby Violante and 20-year-old Stacy Moskowitz were both shot while sitting in their car. Bobby survived, but was rendered blind in the attack. Stacy died 38 hours later in the hospital. After the April 1977 attack, Berkowitz began sending cryptic and taunting letters to the New York City Police Department and Jimmy Breslin, a Daily News columnist. In these letters, he dubbed himself the Son of Sam. One letter read, in part, quote, "I am deeply hurt by your calling me a woman hater. I am not. But I am a monster. I am the Son of Sam. I am a little brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. He beats his family. Sometimes he ties me up to the back of the house. Other times, he locks me in the garage. Sam loves to drink blood. Go out and kill, commands Father Sam. Behind our house some rest, mostly young, raped and slaughtered, their blood drained. Just bones now. Papa Sam keeps me locked in the attic too. I can't get out, but I look out the attic window and watch the world go by. I feel like an outsider. I am on a different wavelength than everybody else, programmed to kill. However, to stop me, you must kill me. Attention all police. Shoot me first. Shoot to kill. Or else. Keep out of my way, or you will die. Papa Sam is old now. He needs some blood to preserve his youth. He has had too many heart attacks. Too many heart attacks. I miss my pretty princess most of all. She's resting in Our Lady's house, but I'll see her soon. I am the monster. Beelzebub, the chubby behemoth. I love to hunt, prowling the streets, looking for fair game, tasty meat." End quote. After his arrest in 1977, David Berkowitz informed police officers, quote, that a man from 6,000 years ago named Sam spoke to him through his neighbor Sam Carr's black Labrador retriever, commanding him to kill. When police searched Berkowitz's apartment, they found satanic graffiti scrawled on the walls and diaries with details of his cruel activities, including all the fires he had set since he was 21. End quote. Despite his initial claim to have been possessed by his neighbor's dog, and that the man from 6,000 years ago named Sam was a centuries-old demon, David Berkowitz later renounced this, stating, quote, that he never truly believed that he'd been possessed by his neighbor's dog, end quote. We'll cover David Berkowitz and the son of Sam killings in an upcoming episode of the Red Treehouse. From June 1984 to August 1985, Los Angeles was terrorized by a terrifying serial killer, whose list of convictions is among the worst and most evil of any murderer. 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. Richard Ramirez's reign of terror had Los Angeles on edge for more than a year. We will cover Richard Ramirez in an upcoming episode of the Red Treehouse, but for now, we will focus on his obsession with Satan and his potential impact on the paranoia that gripped the U.S. in the mid-1980s. A New York Times article dated September 2, 1985, reported some of the crime scenes, quote, had 5 pointed stars associated with witchcraft and devil worship, end quote. By the time Richard Ramirez was caught in the late summer of 1985, his connection to Satan and the occult were headline news. A Britannica article offered insight into Richard Ramirez, stating, quote, a self-described Satanist, Ramirez made various references to Satan during his legal proceedings. He notably drew a pentagram on his palm. It was reported Ramirez, when assaulting his victims, would make them swear to Satan they would not scream or cry out for help. At his first court appearance, Ramirez raised a hand with a pentagram drawn on it and yelled, "Hail Satan." Of course, there are other murderers who claim to be Satanists or to have killed in the name of Satan. But we're forced to ask if this was causation or correlation. In other words, were these murderers compelled to kill because they worshipped Satan? Or were they motivated by some other factor or factors and just happened to be Satanists? In part 1 of our exploration of the Satanic Panic, I referenced Mike Warnke's 1972 memoir, The Satan Seller, where he claimed to have been part of a group of Satanists who participated in rape and child sacrifice, before eventually converting to Christianity. The book was debunked, but it made no difference. The paranoia surrounding Satanism was settling in. As claims of satanic ritual abuse became more widespread, something interesting happened. Agencies and organizations with minimal association were now compelled to work together. Advocacy groups, mental health professionals, law enforcement, and evangelical Christians. As allegations of satanic ritual abuse made headlines, pastors and churches across the country began preaching about the dangers of Satanism, hosted prayer meetings, and invited experts on the occult to guest lecture. In 1978, televangelist Jerry Falwell founded the Moral Majority, quote, with the explicit purpose of pushing both politics and culture to the right and to make his version of evangelical Christianity a de facto state religion, end quote. The Moral Majority sought to take back America for God and had the numbers to do it. Financial resources, mailing lists, syndicated radio and television programs, and more. All of which allow for access to individuals and families across the United States. For many conservative Christians, the threat of satanic influence and possession was too great a battle to pass up, even if later years would prove conspiracy theories false. If God's greatest adversary is Satan, then it makes sense that the church should do everything to fight him, no matter the cost. For several decades, conservative Christians decried what they considered an attack on a godly worldview and lifestyle. They bemoaned the free love hippie lifestyle of the 1960s, cried foul at the progression of modernism, and had a renewed vigor in defending what they called the traditional family, which to them consisted of one man, one woman, and either biological or adopted children. When the first cases of alleged satanic ritual abuse hit the mainstream, they quickly found an enemy to blame: Satan. Newspapers and journalists quickly published exposés and op-ed pieces warning of a grave satanic threat. One article stated, quote, "According to self-styled authorities on cults, devil worshippers perform 50,000 human sacrifices a year, nationwide." End quote. Something interesting. 50,000 human sacrifices is more than twice the number of murders nationwide. As important, these statistics force us to ask a basic question: where's the evidence of these kidnappings and murders? One article answered the question, quote, "The murders are not recorded because the bodies are never found. And the bodies are not found because they are mutilated, the blood drained, and any remains not used for ritual purposes are burned." End quote. In some ways, the Satanic Panic produced an industry filled with self-proclaimed experts, both religious and secular, warning of the dangers of these secret satanic networks. Catherine Gould, a clinical psychologist, published a list of symptoms which she claimed allowed someone to know if they were an abuse survivor. Here is a portion of that list. Quote, "Overeating, undereating, anorexia, bulimia, binging, or unexplained vomiting, an unwillingness to eat brown or red food, bathroom avoidance or accidents, a fear of doctors, injections, needles, and medical procedures, mood swings, disrespect or resistance to authority, fear of being tied up, claustrophobia, fear of death or ghosts, unwillingness to attend church, fear of aggressive animals, police officers, or violent movies, fear of cemeteries or mortuaries, and imaginary friends." As vague as this list is, many found it helpful in determining if they or someone they loved was the victim of satanic ritual abuse. But here's the thing. During the Satanic Panic, people were hypervigilant in protecting themselves, their loved ones, and especially children, from the clutches of Satan. And to stay protected meant to expose, identify, and distance oneself from potential satanic influences. This included movies, music, games, and popular culture. In episode 62 of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore Satanism more specifically and consider the cultural influences that watered the seeds of the Satanic Panic. And finally, in episode 64, we'll explore the aftermath of the Satanic Panic and consider the parallels to today's conspiracy-laden society. I'll admit, I'm a bit cynical when it comes to nationwide hysterias, like the Satanic Panic. It's unfortunate to me that real lives were affected. Remember, there were over 12,000 unsubstantiated cases of satanic ritual abuse during the moral panic. Families were broken apart, and lives were ruined. But, and this is partially my cynicism coming into play, lots of money was made. An entire industry was formed as a result of the supposed moral panic sweeping through America in the 1980s. Sometimes, people are enraptured by situations like this because they want to enact positive change. For others, it brings a sense of belonging. But still for others, these are nothing more than prime opportunities to gain power and money. And unfortunately, more often than not, it's at the expense of innocent people caught in the undertow. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with these lingering questions. What role did religion play in the Satanic Panic? And is it possible that a few infamous true crime cases helped set the world ablaze? I've shared the details. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.